So welcome everybody. Good to have you all here. Peter, welcome back. Good to see you. Corey,
Good, Michael.
how's it going? I don't know if you remember, when we were a kid, there was a TV show called Hobo Kelly, and she used to say hi to kids out in TV, like she could see them. So she would be like, just a second, let me let Dan in. 1 second. If you see me looking up to the right, I'm just letting people in. So yeah, so she would say, okay, and I see Billy and Johnny and Michael, and I'd be like getting ready for school in my underwear. And part of me would be like, can she see me? Right? Because you're just a little kid. Like, that's the power of imagination. Part of me knew she probably couldn't, but there was doubt. She did say my name, and there's only one Michael.
It's so funny. In New York, we had Romper Room.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember.
And she'd look through her magic mirror or something, and she'd start calling out names,
Yeah.
And of course, you're just waiting for you to hear your name.
That's it, right?
It's all about me.
Exactly. Perfect. I was just going to say that. Right? I mean, what sweeter sound than your own name? But that's the thing. It's just a sound. It's not you. It's a sound. So I don't know if any of you saw my post today, but on Facebook, I posted something very simple, but I think it's worth going into. It's only 4 words, but oftentimes we can nod in agreement when I say these 4 words, but I would like to delve a little deeper, because if it hits you, it can be quite profound. So the post is, all words are stories. Now, it's quite possible you never thought of it that way. I know I certainly didn't.
Michael, what was the last word? I was coughing. All words are.
Wait, you were coughing while I was,
I know, I apologize. I ruined your big moment.
All words are stories.
Stories, thank you.
It's like a mini story, and we don't tend to think of words as being a story. But dog, just the word dog, right? That's a story. It's about a creature, it's got 4 legs, wet nose.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's, your story for a dog might be different than my story for a dog, right? So inherently, it really can't mean anything.
That's right. That's right. The word dog isn't the slobbering, hairy, happy bundle in front of us, right? The word dog. Think about the word dog, and then think about an actual dog. They have nothing in common. They're not related at all. And in Spanish, it's perro. So and think about it. Our thoughts are made of words.
I remember at one point I noticed that while I was experiencing something, I was constantly translating it into words so I could share it or communicate about it. Or it's like my code was words, and the experience got kind of pushed back by the words.
Yeah, I meant to add this last week. Last week we talked about emotions. I don't know if you remember, we talked about emotions and how overwhelming they can be at last week's meeting. And you might notice that we're never actually with the raw emotion itself. If you might notice, we tend to go to story about it lightning fast. As soon as the headache appears, oh man, crap, I have a headache. All right, what do I need to do to get rid of this? We go right to story. And we're never really with the raw emotion just as it is, however it is. So I'm just pointing that out because I noticed that tendency in myself. It's like we're afraid the feelings are going to overrun us. So as a protection mechanism, we make up a story about it. Because we can deal, the mind, right? We can deal with stories than we can with emotion.
Michael, isn't that like we talked about last week, like boredom? Like, you know, the story would be the distraction, so to speak, from the actual experience, you know?
Exactly. Because then, but look how we actually go, right? It's just we say, it always starts, right? Wow, I'm really bored. So right there, you've left the raw feeling and now you're in story. Well, how can I get out of being bored? So look at that. Now you're up here in story, right? And you're not present. There's no being with what actually is. So what I'm saying is boredom isn't actually boredom. You don't know what it is.
Boredom is definitely something that it's not enough. I need something else. I need more. I need something else, or it's not what I want. That kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Peter. And the only thing is, that's the me's constant drumbeat. That's the me's broken record. It always wants something other than what is. That's not possible. How could there be something other than what is? So the me is constantly trying to escape from the only thing that is. Thus the suffering. You know, a couple days ago, I made a post about something that Tim Kliss had said about when this was seen by him. He said that he cried for weeks upon seeing the emptiness of everything. Like, and he said before that the me doesn't want this. Have anybody ever heard that at a non-duality meeting? The me doesn't want this. So he's right, in my experience. you don't want this because it sounds good. You think you want this. If you're going to be there, you would want this. But what we're talking about is doesn't include you. There never was a you to include. And that's, there can be real sadness, like a real, like when you realize that all those memories, as a child, everything every toy, every experience, positive or negative, none of it was ever yours.
But Michael, I was on another talk and they were, it's about Byron Katie and Jack and how they lost all concept of words. And they had to learn how to walk and talk all over again. And they had to learn how to be in this world all over again because there was such a dissolving of that component in their brain or something. I mean, I don't know. And that's pretty dramatic, to just like, words were gone for Byron Katie and Jack O'Keefe. It blew up into nowhere. And they were left to try to figure out, well, how does one maneuver in this?
No, but that's the whole point, Joan. There's no one left.
Right. Well, do people that have this collapse of the identity how many people have, a dramatic experience where, you have to learn words all over again?
Right.
Because that's these people have had like a dramatic experience.
Right. But I know you don't believe me. I know you're not going to believe what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's no Joan over there.
Like it's an avatar.
Well, we don't know. See, that's the beauty about this message is it's saying, I don't know about anything. That's the freedom. The jail, your prison is that you think you know. It's horrible. It's literally like a box, this box of knowledge. So anything you know, and it's not done purposely. It just happens to be the way it works, right? Nobody did this. There's nobody being mean. It just so happens that when I think I know what something is, there's a sense of a me there that now knows something, and I have to protect it. Somebody attacks it or disagrees.
It's such a recipe for disaster because what you know is always going to change anyway. Even if you know something 100%, things are always changing. So it's a recipe for disaster eventually.
Yeah, it's so funny, Corey, because if I say to you now, what do you really know for 100% certainty? I can't name anything. I couldn't tell you one thing that I am 100% certain on. But so even what I am, right? What I am. So that would be maybe a benefit of coming here to this meeting is a loosening up of those core concepts that have gone unexamined, that you're just so convinced that you're this entity that's here now and is moving through time, and you came from a past and you're going toward a future. This meeting is poking a hole in that balloon. This meeting is saying there is no past, there is no future, there's never been a past, and there's never been a future. There's only and always been this. however it's appearing. And it's what's right now. So you don't actually have a past. You don't have a future. There's only what's appearing now, and part of the appearance can include a sense of a memory that you had a childhood, that you grew up with brothers and sisters, and like that. But that memory is experienced when? I mean, look now, can you find anything else but this? What else is there? So that's the answer to the question, how many have heard nothing ever happened? How many have heard that like at spiritual meetings? I know I have. Nothing ever happened. I never got that, by the way. Right? What do you mean nothing ever happened? Well, Tim was talking about it on his Zoom session on Monday, and he's so, I feel really lucky to have found him because we resonate so well. To everything he says, I'm just like, yes. Nothing ever happened because this is the only happening. There is no other happening.
First time I have a glimpse of what it means. I just like you, I didn't know what to do with it.
And this is nothing. Once it becomes something, it becomes a story.
Mhm,
And then it's no longer this.
mhm, mhm. Same thing, I didn't get that either, but thanks, Dan.
That was good.
And the mind is always already in the story. It starts from the story. It's already left this and it's situated. It's planted in the middle of a story. And then it wants knowledge because it's trying to get out of its position by finding the right knowledge, the right answer. But it always is looking inside the story. When always the answer, the quote unquote answer, is just this, which is not knowledge. There's no knowledge about this. Empty.
I like what you said, Dan, about, the me starting in that position, that 0 and the 1 that we talk about all the time.
Exactly.
That's so key, because that's always a way to kind of, if you check yourself for that all the time, you can kind of, it's very helpful. That 0, where am I starting from? What's happening? That whole
That's
thing.
the key to everything.
Very helpful.
And that's
So
the me always misses that.
we can take that 0 and 1, and I'm even going to go a little with that and say there actually isn't even a 1.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's why
Right.
nothing ever happens. It isn't. The 1 is, there's a story of 1.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's great, Dan, because there's no problem with stories. That's what's so beautiful about this message. That's what I love about this. That's why I'm excited to talk about this and share. And it's so rare because stories are just stories, and there's going to be tragic ones and sad ones and happy ones, all kinds. But none of them are real. I mean, they're just stories. But if we believe them, like Dan said, now we're in knowledge. This has now left the building, and now I know something. So when stories are held very lightly, oh, I have a Zoom at 6 o'clock, no problem. It's just a light little story. It doesn't have really any significance. But when me is there, what do our stories have? A shit ton of significance. If I'm there, man, I'm really upset at that lady. I'm really mad. And boom, now I'm in mind, I'm in story, and I'm spinning and suffering.
Well, I like what you said about, the purpose of coming to these Zoom meetings, sitting with Tim, sitting with you, sitting with Jim Newman. I've had so much of that the last 3 days. I had to turn Jim Newman off. It's still like, because the me is here, it's still trying to get something. And I like what you said about maybe just coming and listening and continuing to do these things is loosening something up. And I think it is loosening something up. And I think there have been 2 or 3 times I've had some lucid moments. But here I still am coming, and that's all I really know how to do. But it makes total sense that I can see for myself this idea of me is what's creating all the suffering, and yet the suffering is continually being created. So I come to these meetings because I know all the other ways don't work. I've tried them for over 20 years. There were certainly periods where it certainly seemed like they were working, of what I thought was a greater amount of peace in my life. But this makes absolute sense to me, what you non-dual people are saying. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alice.
Nothing is ever going to work because there is no problem. All the problems are in the story. That's where all the solutions are, but there's no solution to what's really, really, really going on.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in a story, there can be a solution, right? So if I'm going to make some, fettuccine Alfredo, right? I want to get a good recipe and follow the directions and like that, have a good dinner. So there's nothing wrong with having stories and preferences. Preferences are completely natural and human. We all have preferences. It's just that the me comes in there and says, I'm right. And so anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. And every me is doing that.
Because every me is telling a story starting from my knowledge. I'm starting in the knowledge place and then building a story on that, and then looking for the solution in that story and in some kind of knowledge. None of that has anything to do with reality. The only reality is this, which is zero. It's always this. There's no time for it to develop a story. There's no time for it to develop. There's no place for it to develop a position and to build a story on. All of that just happens in the scene, in the theater of the mental process. And you're not there. You're never there. You're just always here.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
And this, what we're speaking of, right? This right here, right? Whatever this is unmoved by your stories.
Stories have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
If they did, we'd be having a different meeting. It's like trying to always sometimes talk about putting the shaving cream on the mirror and then shaving the mirror and trying, it's a completely different, there's.
Right. Yeah. So you're mistaking yourself for the face in the mirror. So the body is empty. There's nothing inside there. And the sense of the me is that I'm located here. And the problem with knowing that you're located here is with here comes there. Can't have a here without a there. Otherwise, how would you know here? You have to have a distinction. If everything, go
when
ahead.
the mind says here, the mind means here in the middle of my story of what's happening, where I am, what I know, all of that. But that ain't here. Here is not in a story. Here is more present. It's staying at zero, like Corey says, before you move out into the story, because there only is just this.
Yeah, you can't say what this is. We
Well,
don't.
what you said, Dan, was interesting about the me is in the middle of the story. I remember being at Satsang and Michael had a picture of the me as the sun with the planets going around it, you know? And it was such a good visual of like, that is what the me does. Everything revolves around the me. The story, you know, like that's what the me does. It just, everything in the world revolves around it. So when you
Yeah.
said in the middle, that was like really, that hit me, you know,
Yeah, and
because
part
it
of
is in the middle, you know?
part of that is the idea that not only am I in the middle of all these revolving planets, which we could call all the elements of my story, all the people, all the events, all the stuff, but I can control. I have some control over this swirling thing, and I can get these planets in line somehow and get that to be the answer to what my discomfort. That's the story of the me, and it ain't so.
So control, right? Free will is a story.
Mm-hmm.
And none of this will make sense to the me, but if it makes sense somehow here, we can go into it.
Yeah, it's more of a resonance, I would say. It's not an intellectual, I mean, there can be intellectual agreement with this, but that doesn't go deep enough just to agree with the concepts, because you're just trading in I'm a me story for I'm a not me story. But you still, the
Would
contraction.
just be more knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowledge ain't no good for this.
So
well, free will would imply a me.
yes,
Sure.
yeah, perfect.
So there you go, right? I mean,
Beautiful. Bullseye. Yeah, if there's no me, then who is there to have free will? So let's be with that. Like one of my things I notice is sometimes people won't really take the time to go into the depth. So something like there's no free will because there's no me there to have free will. That is not something that you're just gonna, it's to be, at least in my opinion, it's to be sat with. And this sadness that Tim Kliss talked about, it's kind of sneaks up on you because you really, in a way, if you really want to be a me, this is not a good place. Like I resisted that for so long. I'm like, no, how could this not? No, just because there's no room for you, it's the extinction of the one who thought that they were separate from life. So without that, there's just what's happening. But it's not happening to anyone. So there's just what's happening. The me, that's the add-on. It's happening to me. That's the assumption.
Right.
So all your emotions and your feelings, they're all still there, but they're just not yours. That's the freedom.
Just like the trees in the garden are still there. There's just no, the trees aren't anybody's, right? If we want to know who the trees belong to, we have to tell a story about the trees, and we have to look at it from a particular point of view. Again, that's what the story is. It's just looking at building a picture of something from a point of view. And so anything you try to know about anything, or anything you try to, it's always just going to be back in a story.
We could use the map, right, Dan, the map of the United States. The United States, if you go above and look down, right, from an airplane, it doesn't look anything like the map.
Right.
The map is just arbitrary. It's just an agreed upon story. This is where Arizona and Nevada meet and like that, but it doesn't actually exist.
Map is not the territory.
Thank you.
All right,
My
Peter,
favorite.
you can go now. You've done your job.
We're where the rubber meets the road.
So this fear, what hit me was that it's not really talked about. The fear of the me's death, the sadness of, it is, I mean, the only way I can, and this doesn't do it justice, but it is, if you can remember back to the shock, and you'd have to go back to that moment when you were a little kid, probably around, I don't know, I was, who knows, 7, 8, when someone told you there was no Santa Claus. And you were so convinced as a kid that those presents, that there really was a Santa. And then there comes a moment where, no, Santa was never real. And so there can be some sadness, right? I remember a mom coming to me after teaching at a chess class at a school, and she said, yeah, I think the girl was 8. And she said, so Mom, what's this rumor I'm hearing about Santa? Right? What's this rumor I'm hearing about Santa? Meaning she had just gotten the news that Santa wasn't real. So that's what I'm saying. When you realize that this me that you've taken yourself to be your whole life was, I don't know, I want to say a figment of your imagination. It doesn't mean presents can't still happen and singing of Christmas carols still can't, you know what I'm saying? And dressing up in red suits can't happen, but it's no longer believed in as real. And that's the suffering. Believing something that to be real that isn't.
I always had trouble with the concept of religion since I was a kid. And the concept that God is all knowing and out there, it never resonated with me. And I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about? What? I don't see anything. Well, God is like the wind. You can feel it, but you can't see it. I'm like, I think that's the wind.
Right. Okay, Joan. You didn't believe in God, but you believed in a me.
Wind.
No,
well, I
but
gave
the
it
me.
so, and I had it when I just wanted to give it. Well, what is it? Well, we call it the wind.
Right, but apply that to the me.
Yes. It kind of comes and goes in waves. Sometimes I'm less identified with it. Before I left LA, my whole identification with expensive jewelry, the diamonds and gold thing, it left. I don't know where it went. It left. So I had to get rid of all of it, and I bought a stove instead because we needed a stove. But I just like my whole identification with all the myths or words around whatever that is. And I remember oogling over the jewelry when I walked into Costco. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh my.
Right.
Nothing lands. And I'm like, I don't know. Well, I know how it got in there from commercials and society and competing, but I don't know how it left, but it just disappeared.
Right. Okay, good. So that's the same that you just said can be with the me. You can begin to notice that you can't really find a me, even if it feels like it. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes this meeting a little even radical. I'm saying I don't care if you feel like a me. I'm saying that doesn't mean anything. There's a sense of awaiting. There can be in the spiritual of, well, I'm not there yet. And my proof is because I still feel like a me. No, that's not proof of anything. That's a story.
Michael, it's like what you said before, like how you started off this satsang, you have a feeling or an emotion, go into that feeling, right? Instead of distracting yourself, go into it. I say do the same with that feeling of the me, just go into that feeling and investigate that feeling and just sit with that and get deeper and deeper into that feeling and just move that energy to that feeling. Just keep doing that. And that's the experiential, to me, that's kind of like the hard work, but just keep inquiry into that feeling of the me. And eventually you might see that there is no me, or maybe not.
Yeah, and there's
but that's
nothing, but good, Corey, but what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with feeling like a me. It's almost like the me uses that, it's like almost like a trick. Well, it's like proof. No, you're not free because I'm still here. And when I'm gone, then you'll know. Bullshit. When the me's not there, who would know? So when the me's not there, who would know that they're enlightened?
If there is a tree falling in the forest, nobody's there.
Peter.
Sorry.
It's all right. You got your red Buddhist robes on. So there is more laughter as you see through your concepts. You can laugh and begin, like you just shared, right? There's concepts that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore.
I just don't know how it disappeared.
Right. That's what I'm saying. When the me goes, you won't know it because you won't be there. It'll just light. My sense is that it's just everything feels lighter. There's not the seriousness because to me, everything is very, very heavy, very serious, very real. Life and death.
Shakti Katerina said, I think I told you this one of our satsangs, fear is joy contracted around me. It's the contraction.
Yeah.
All identification is contraction. And I can feel it in my system when I'm, identifying. I mean, there's just tightness, there's contraction.
Yeah. And it can ruin anything. You could be at a good party and, all the ingredients would be there to have a good time, except that just the me's in like a crappy mood for no reason, right? And so it's not the experience that determines, it's the presence of believing you're a separate entity from life. That's the suffering.
Me, it feels like there is consciousness. Consciousness is a thing. And it's not the me, it's not of me, and it's not in me. It's separate from that. And it's not mine. You know, I don't know that my consciousness is separate than the consciousness of the 9 of you or the tree outside. But consciousness provides a platform for the illusory me to rest and dissipate somehow, enlighten. You got to worry about a story, obviously, but that's what I've noticed. How do you feel about consciousness, Michael?
Charles, I think you know how I feel.
I don't actually.
Well, I used to use words. If you go back and look at my old blogs, you'll see words like awareness and consciousness, because there was a time where I, like most seekers, was told, right, by gurus and spiritual teachers in the know that, yes, you're awareness, you are consciousness, that's your true nature. So I spent years looking for this awareness so I could, merge and become one with it. And I came up.
You don't have to look with that. I mean, it's just there, right? Consciousness is just there. It's not something you need to look for.
Yeah, that's fine. If it works for you, I have no problem, Charles. If you want to call it consciousness. For me, I just say there's just this. There's just what's happening. So that's why you guys, I said earlier about nothing ever happened. That's so powerful. That's another one that you could sit with. You could do a lot worse than sit with nothing ever, because it's pointing out that there's no other happening but this. It's very subtle, but if it hits you.
I think we're just using words different.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, if consciousness works for you. For me, it just became consciousness. Then I had to be conscious of. So for me, that was dualistic. But if it works for you.
Know of.
Like that, nothing ever happened. Like it just kind of hit me. Yeah, that would imply that there was something outside of the now that would have to happen. If it happened, it would have to be elsewhere, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? In location or whatever. So that couldn't happen.
I love that you said that about it hitting you, because that's
it just hit me.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you're sitting here and you realize, well, yeah, this is the only thing happening. I mean, yeah, you can have memory. I'm not denying that you can, believe in a past, but it's all memory happening now, and future is all imagination. But there's only ever this, and what this is, we can't say, because it's everything. Everything appears here. And it's nothing, because you can't grab it. You can't get hold of it. You can't actually hold on to anything. So there's nothing actually becomes. Everything is just happening, but it never actually happens as a finality, as a period, because of impermanence.
I had a dream about 3-4 years ago that I was in my hometown and there was a huge construction site in kind of a weird place. And then I went home a couple years ago and there was a construction site in that really weird place. Like, they dug into an entire hill and excavated it. So I went back and Google Earth. I mean, I don't go home very much. I hadn't been home in 10, 15 years. Went back and Google Earth. Is there any way when I had that dream? It was a very, very crisp dream. Went back and looked. There's no way in Google Earth they hadn't started construction when I had the dream. And then I grabbed my god sister and we went and we looked at the hole, and then we had this amazing night together and shared a bunch of stuff. It's like a marker or something. I don't know. To me, that really messes up. So there is no future. How can I drill into that? And I'm not the only one. People tell stories about having dreams about the future, what happens in the future, things that they could not know all the time, or premonitions.
Sure.
The Monroe Institute talks about that. They talk about, I don't know if it's lucid dreaming or astral plane or something, but
So
But Charles, you just answered your own question. You said people tell lots of stories about X or Y. So, you know,
Yeah, but it happened to me. I mean, it happened. And when
but
it
the
happened,
key
it
is,
was
do you want
now.
to suffer? Because if you believe that story and you go to Google Earth and you keep looking and what does it mean? But now you're in story and now you're just suffering in a way. What does it mean? And what's the meaning of life? And all these and the mind gets active. I mean, nothing wrong with it, but just want to point out, you know.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not suffering about it, but to me, it tells me that the past, future, present might be all the same thing. And that there are portals to the future in a way that we don't understand. I'm not arrogant enough to think I understand everything, right?
You're deriving some conclusions from it.
Ah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah, that's
connecting some dots. to
yeah,
make the
exactly. Yeah, good, Peter. Yeah, the me is sort of on a treasure hunt, right? So you can see, Charles, I mean, and again, I don't want to dissuade, I'm not here to talk anybody into anything, but there is no getting anywhere. This isn't actually, this is the appearance of movement that is ever unmoved. This doesn't go anywhere. This has never moved.
What challenges me is I have no problem with this is all there is and there is only this. No problem. And when I ask, how can this be? Like, you know, when earlier we talked about God, like somebody has to be behind all this.
Yeah.
You know, somebody had to strike a match or something.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like how can this be? That really blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like asking, well, Santa must have brought those presents because I went to bed and there weren't any under the tree, and I wake up and there they are. That's proof. But there they are. They must. So the idea that that's actually good, Peter. We could actually spend a whole nother meetup on this, but you know, the idea that this is happening, the me assumes that there's a cause.
Mm-hmm. Right. How could something be without the cause is a tough one for me. Really. Really.
But really that's, Peter, because you know about causes. You know, you learned the story of cause and effect. You learned I mean, the question, how could this be, already implies a knowing of how it could be otherwise, how there could be something that isn't how this is,
Right. Yeah.
you know, and that is all the construction of the mental operation.
Yeah. I mean, I want to.
Oh, you can just build more stories with that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't want to be too mundane, but like I like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and when I listen to like the size of the universes and then they talk about it expands at incredible speeds and you go like, man, you know, it really, it doesn't seem, some people seem to, you know, like deGrasse Tyson thinks we got it all under control. You know, we're discovering more and more, and you know, we got it. I don't get it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is different than what we're doing right here.
And if you think there's something to get and somewhere to go, then you're going to be full on into the story of somewhere to get and something to go, somewhere to go. And it's going to make sense until it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, these people measure, I mean, they
Yeah.
use math and astrophysics and they come up with pretty solid stories.
Yeah. And it works. I mean, we can build, rockets to Mars.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so some of these stories actually have practical application.
Mm-hmm. It's called science.
Yeah.
Well, without language, there would be no stories.
Yes.
And without stories, we wouldn't be here. I mean, everything that we do is part of the story.
I'm waiting for Joanna to say it's turtles all the way
Oh
down.
no.
Yeah. So it's story.
Busted me not paying that much attention, unfortunately. I had to do something.
No problem. So yeah, it's all because there's only just this. And if that lands or there's only this, the idea that something else needs to happen. Oh, Diane caught at the tail end here. The idea that something else needs to happen or could happen. There you go. It's not that, it's the idea that there's the possibility of anything else but what is. There's just this doesn't have room for any other possibility. And the me is always saying, well, what about this? And maybe this could have happened. No.
Well, Bill Clinton, it depends on what your definition of is. What is your definition of is? What is this? What is this that this is? Sounds a little tautological here. What are we saying?
Just
Well, we're going to run out of words before we get there, to what is, because it's not, but you could say it's just whatever is not a story. Whatever is not knowledge, whatever is not part of that bubble of what I know and what I can learn and describe and tell a story about. And it really is not relevant unless you're interested in things like happiness and peace and the end of suffering and stuff like that.
Yeah, my point is there danger in saying that what is, and this?
Yeah. That's the trap of language. We can't get out of that.
we don't know. We don't know what is. That's the freedom. The freedom is in the not knowing. See, it's counterintuitive because we've all been taught knowledge is power and more knowledge is more power. And what we're saying here is that the freedom is in unknowing because that's the reality. You actually don't know what anything is. You have stories that are very convincing, but as those are seen through, then you may experience a lightning.
That's why we say this cannot be gotten by the me. We cannot be understood. Because all that can be understood is understanding, which is, again, just more of the knowledge stuff. And that's all for the me.
Hey, Diane, we've missed you. I'm glad you were able to squeeze us in here right at the end.
Well, you must have changed daylight savings or something.
We did.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
Told me that.
Sorry. I had
That's
the same.
why the Aussies are not here.
Oh, I fell for the same trick with Tim Kliss. After daylight savings last week, I was an hour early thinking, where's everybody? And it was an hour. Yeah. So
And-
we're in the future.
So we'll be changing ours probably in another week or two. So for us, it'll go from 1 to 12, which it is now, and then it'll go to 11 o'clock here. Okay.
well, all I can tell you is we went ahead an hour.
Yeah.
That's so funny. How long have we been on this planet together, on this globe, and we still haven't figured out how all of our times work together?
Well, if you ever needed convincing that time's an illusion, the fact that we can take an hour out and then put it back 6 months later should be a clue.
And I've been sitting here waiting too.
Oh.
Oh, well, see you all. I listened to last week's satsang. It was really good.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you want to see a good illustration of how there's no objective time, we could all try to sing happy birthday across the globe, and you could see that no matter how much we tried, we couldn't synchronize it because of. But maybe
Just
not.
to let you know, Faith had another commitment tonight.
Okay, thank you, Alice.
Next time somebody has a birthday, we should try it.
So I'll tell you the cliff notes, Diane. All words are stories.
Oh, yeah.
And nothing's happening.
Nothing ever happened.
Yeah, nothing ever happened because there's only this happening right now.
Whatever this is.
It's really hard to convince people of that. I tell you, I just had a client this morning. It's like, it was a foreign concept to him that you could actually witness your own thoughts and feelings. He looked at me as if I was alien. What are you talking about? So yeah, it's really stuck in a story and it's heavy and wow.
Yeah, the me is very identified, and to give it, it's very threatening. You know, if that's why I never push this. I never, it's the kind of thing where you have to be hungry. It's the last house on the block, because the last thing, as a kid, if you told a kid you're nobody, them's fighting words. People don't like to be told they don't have free will. People don't like to be told they don't exist. So really, it's just those rare few that sense, like I used to say, I used to feel like something was off about life, and I could never put my finger on it. And it turned out the problem was me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me of the saying, if you're talking to someone who identifies with their ego, they think the older I get, the more I know. And then you talk to somebody who's on like a wisdom path or whatever, and it's like you realize the older you are, the less you know.
The more you know what you don't know.
It all dissolves in the end, but the ego thinks the older it is, the more it knows.
He's also the end to Michael says, shit.
I love what you said, Joan, how it all dissolves at the end, because that's something that the ego doesn't want to hear. And it's the truth. And you just keep that in mind and nothing's really serious,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Corey. This will all be gone. I often think about that. I'm like, there'll be a time when you won't. I remember Tim said, we have this fantasy of hearing people saying all these kind things at our funeral. Like we'll be there eavesdropping as they say what a sweet and kind and great person. He says, no, you won't be there. You will not be there at your own funeral. You will not be here. So, take a moment, even the suffering. I know, guys, it can get pretty intense, the suffering, but there'll come a time when this dream ends. Thanks, everybody, for coming this evening, this afternoon, so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Those of you who sent a donation, thank you so much. I'll get this out on YouTube in the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'll be on time next week.